And the interesting thing is, not only did I leave his office that day with my father-daughter relationship intact, I left with a lifetime of lessons about love. And I have taken these lessons about love into my 25-year-old marriage, motherhood of my own 2 children, 2 decades worth of couples counseling, not mine, but the counseling I do with other couples. My marriage classes, and with any unsuspecting person I encounter in or out of the beauty salon. One unsuspecting person is a young woman who has worked for our family for 9 years, and long ago she used to be our Mary Poppins, offering child care for our 2 children. And then when our children no longer needed supervision or even chauffeuring, we couldn't part with her because she'd become an integral part of our family. In a sense, I had adopted her. So, when her 6-year-old marriage started showing signs of wear and numerous red flags began to pique my concern, I knew we had to have a talk. For just a moment, I questioned whether what I was about to do was intrusive or overly invasive, but when I pictured her husband and her 2 precious children, ages 5 and 2, that thought, like momentary indigestion, passed. The image of their young family was all the ammunition I needed. I simply told myself that I would wait for the right moment, and then I would launch my divorce-busting guerrilla attack. So the next day, our Mary Poppins, and I'll call her Mary, was at our house and overheard me giving my daughter Danielle my routine speech as she was stepping out the door to return to college after a weekend visit home. Tell me if this sounds familiar, moms. Honey, do you have your phone? And do you have money on you? Drive slowly. Call me when you get there. She waved me on, and I mean waved me on, didn't wave to me, and got into her car. Laughing at my own predictability, I turned to Mary and I said, you know, I should probably just make a tape recording and play it every time Danielle leaves. I sound really funny, don't I? And when Mary replied, no, actually, it's really sweet. I like that you do that with her. I grabbed Mary by her sleeve. I guided her into our family room. I sat her down eyeball to eyeball, and I said, well, if you like that, you're going to love this. And for the next 15 minutes, I proceeded to tell her about the marital danger signs. I cautioned her against being seduced into the grass is greener mindset, and I urged her at all costs to avoid being complacent about her marriage. And oh yes, I offered her a short list of suggestions. Mary thanked me, and we hugged. Mary and her husband are on vacation together even as we speak. So I got to thinking some more. What if everyone looked at day-to-day conversations with people as opportunities to infuse their lives with enthusiasm for strengthening relationships, avoiding divorce, being more accepting, loving, and forgiving? What if we truly took to heart the responsibility that we all have to intervene in the face of ignorance, hopelessness, self-centeredness, and do what we can to plant seeds of possibility, alternatives, and optimism? Imagine what we could do. Now, this is not to say that ours is an easy battle. We all know this. We have a formidable enemy. We have the divorce machine. We have to contend with Hollywood's unrealistic images of love and life. And then there's the legal system, an adversarial system that often polarizes spouses in ways that make hostility and divorce more likely. And there's also certain factions of politicians who believe that marriage isn't government's business. And if that's not enough, the so-called experts couples turn to when they want to save their marriages are often more committed to the pursuit of personal happiness than keeping families together. You know, last week I worked with a new couple. They had both just turned 40, and they'd been married for about 16 years and had 2 kids. A year and a half ago, the man decided he was unhappy, and he went to a therapist alone. Any guesses about what I'm going to say? I asked whether the therapy experience was helpful, and he said, yes, absolutely. And when I asked what was helpful about it, he said, When I started therapy, I always thought that there was this big stigma about divorce, but my therapist helped me realize that that was just in my head. She said that society is much more accepting of divorce now. My therapist helped me to feel okay about my decision to leave. The only sound you could hear in the room after that was the sound of my blood boiling. Additionally, many well-meaning therapists are ill-prepared to offer the concrete skills that couples need to work things out. Let me read to you a letter from John, a man who desperately wanted to keep his family together. I have been separated for almost 8 months now, and we're in the middle of a divorce. We were in psychotherapy for almost 4 years, and somehow it wasn't working. It, he puts in quotations, was a one-way passive process with simply no workshops, no homework, no information, no guidance, no role-playing, just feeling stuff. And me talking about me, and my wife talking about me. Weeks and months went by, and I found myself literally sitting on the edge of the chair in front of my therapist with my hands open and begging for some information. After 2 more years of this passive approach, I told my wife, there simply has to be a better way. We are not making any progress. So I stopped going, and she filed for divorce. The therapist called and requested I explain my feelings to her, so I went back one more time and I stated that I felt you were withholding information from us. Surely, with all these books and certificates on your wall, you must know something about our family situation that can help us. My wife and I are at wit's end with our inability to communicate and agree on how to raise our children. The therapist replied, I am not a professor or a school teacher. I am a psychotherapist. He goes on to say, I believe that our marriage could have been saved. We are good people and good parents. We just needed some guidance. In the end, I have lost my family, and I am now a part-time parent every other weekend. How incredibly sad. If you do refer to marital therapists, make sure you know them inside out. Make sure they believe in the sanctity of marriage. I wrote an article called Choosing a Marital Therapist, and I posted it on my website, divorcebusting.com. Feel free to download it and pass it around to anyone you meet. Bad therapy, no therapy is a heck of a lot better than bad therapy. So what's a guerrilla divorce busting to do? Divorce buster to do. I'm going to share with you 3 unconventional guerrilla divorce busting tactics that you can use with anyone, people on the street, your friends, your relatives, your kids, people in your congregation. And here they are. Guerrilla divorce busting tactic number 1, don't be a friend. I want to make sure you heard that. Don't be a friend. Many of us have had the experience of having close friends and family turn to us when their marriages are on the rocks. Sometimes it's the spouse who's unhappy and considering leaving, and at other times it's the spouse who desperately wants the marriage to be saved. Too often we allow our love or friendship with the person to stand in the way of good advice because we want to help. We want to be a shoulder to lean on, so we empathize and we sympathize and we feel protective. We find ourselves blaming the absent spouse. We say, what in the world is your husband thinking? Why is she treating you that way? But diagnosing the absent spouse is biased, it's short-sighted, and it will only lead to a labyrinth of blame and counter-blame when your friend gets home. You know, Sinbad, the comedian, once said, if my wife watches Oprah in the morning, I know I'm in trouble in the afternoon. And to the extent that we merely mirror back what our friends are thinking and feeling, they'll feel validated and vindicated, but they'll leave our conversations without a clue about what to do when they get home. So here's what to do instead. We need to challenge our friends. We need to make sure that they don't leave our sides until they recognize that if they're unhappy in their marriages, they need to do something to fix it. Be directive. Urge people to stretch themselves. For example, ask your friends, when your husband doesn't prioritize your marriage and he's too busy to spend time with you, or when your wife tells you that she has a headache every time you approach her to make love, how do you handle